Hello, everybody. Here we are at the Moscow 1971 candidates match between Tiger Petrosian and Victor Korchnoi. This is the first of four candidates matches that these two would play together. But here we are, game nine. Check my video on the playlist to get the backstory behind the match and just a brief overview of the other games because there were no decisive games yet. We're 9 games in, and this is the only decisive game of the match. So Petrosian has the white pieces here, and Korchnoi um, has the black pieces. Now, Korchnoi before this game said this game isn't going to be drawn. Uh, he was what it was is he was under some pressure. Both players were, but I guess he reacted, differently than Petrosian. But basically, the audience reacted negatively to the draws. The 8 draws in a row, and there were a lot of short draws too. Like again, if you look at my previous video, I think Game 7 was like 15 moves. Game 5 was like a 13-move draw. I mean, these guys and Petrosian was drawn real quick with the white pieces too. Um, and then Korchnoi even had did it. Game 8 was a quick draw with the white pieces. Um, so the audience was, the press was giving these guys negative feedback, as they should. But Petrosian, that was like his style, and he was more used to. He probably didn't care. It didn't affect him. Um, all right. So Korchnoi, had this, idea that he's gonna try harder, and we'll see it in this game. Let's take a look, and then I'll give my conclusion uh, on the match. So C4, E5, G3 by Petrosian, C6, B3, D5. So we can see again, this is like unambitious opening by White. Petrosian's not trying to being an opening theoretician here. He's just trying to get out the opening, get in a reasonable game, and play chess. Bishop B2, D4. So Korchnoi is taking up the challenge. He solidifies his center, and if this center is allowed to, remain and be mobile, then White is going to have some trouble. So Knight F3. Attacking the center, bishop d6, d3, c5. Korchnoi again is just solidifying his grip in the center. Bishop g2, knight e7, castles. Now he moves the other knight to e6, e3. And now even at this point, one must already think of the consequences if black takes. Now Korchnoi castled here, but again, you must be versed, somewhat in the intricacies of understanding the center before you play even the move e3. Because you have to think, well, what if black takes? Well, of course, this will play into White's hands. Let's look. For example, if D takes e3, right? F takes e3. We already see a portion of black center has disappeared. And then from here, let's give White a few moves just so you can see the idea behind this hyper modern stuff. Knight would be, move like knight c3 again, the grip on e5, d5, and e4. Again, let's give White another move. Then White would mobilize his center by playing d4, and then let's give Black some moves now. So C takes d4, just so you can get the picture. And this is basically what White wants to do when he allows Black, to raise up the big center like that. Right? It proved that the center is a liability. And this would be like the ideal position for White. Now you notice Black center is totally gone, and you see that at a distance, right? White is in total control of the center with his pieces. Bishop on b2, bishop on g2, right? The only pawn that's influencing the center is the white pawn on c4, which is a flank pawn in the 2 rooks. So this would be White's ideal position. And of course, even though the pawns are equal, White is substantially better in this position. His pieces are well coordinated and control all of the open files, while black is still not developed yet. And white has a 3-2 pawn majority on the queen side, and the bishop pair. So all of these factors give white an advantage. But this is basically what white's plan is when he starts playing moves like e3. Of course, black knows not to take, and the tension continues. So castles. Again, if white can take right now, but it might prove to be premature. Right? Say he fixes it and fixes his target on the e pawn. And play could go somewhere like this, of course, a3 with the idea of b4 and b5, kicking the knight away from the protection of the e5 pawn. This is a common theme, sacrificing the c pawn for the e pawn. And even in the variation like this, right, black still maintains his space advantage. Okay, black is still a little better due to that space advantage, while white remains substantially cramped, and black has good prospects on the queen side. All right, so this is a delicate position where neither player really wants to exchange at this point, but there's a tension there. So knight bd2. Korchnoi keeps developing. Bishop e6, e4. Now this is an interesting choice by Petrosian. So he decides to lock up the position. Okay. Now, yes, he wastes some time here, but time is not as important in these closed positions. But nevertheless, let there be no doubt about it. Black is fully equalized, if not slightly better, because this space advantage and his super solid center, give him the slightest of advantages. Is he going to overrun the white position right now? No, but he has a comfortable position. His pieces are developed, and he has a fortress in the center. There's no pressure on the e and c pawns right now. Knight h4. And now g6, keeping the knight off f5. And even at this point, Korchnoi is probably, looking at the structure and figuring the break on the queen side, on the king side with the move f5, where g6 is useful. Another plan, of course, is going for the break on the queen side with b5, organizing that, maybe a6, b5, or rook b8, and what have you. Bishop f. So after g6, bishop f3, what is Petrosian's idea here? He wants to just simply trade off the his light square bishop, which is bad. Notice it, all the pawns on white squares, for black's light square bishop, which is his quote-unquote good bishop. Right? Just simple. Petrosian is not playing for anything. We went over Petrosian's style in the first video of this series. Petrosian's not he's not trying to push. He's not playing for anything. He's just waiting, hoping Korchnoi makes some type of error and then pounce on the error. So here he's just playing real logical chess. He's saying, I got a bad bishop, I'll trade it for his good bishop. Here, Korchnoi makes what I feel is like an inaccuracy. He plays bishop c7. Now, again, that's his bad bishop, and he's trying to better it by bringing it to the a5 diagonal. I think more effective is bishop e7. Okay, so as he threatens to win a pawn immediately with the position of this knight on h4. So knight g2, and now he accomplishes the same thing but with tempo. The other way, by playing bishop g5. Okay, and now the idea is, if bishop g4, then just bishop takes g4. Bishop g4 would be an error because now the knight on d2 would be unprotected. You see, so how this crosses, and of course that won't happen, but you see how it crosses white's plans. And that's important. Like, you see this idea, okay, he wants to trade this bishop, and then you further your plans, but at the same time cross his idea. So bishop e7, that forces him to do something about the knight. He played that, and now he has to postpone his plan with the bishop. Okay, and then say, for instance, Queen E2. Let's say he plays Queen E2 here. Now you can bring this knight to. You can even bring this knight to F6. And now the bishop is just sitting on F3 without, kind of any rhyme or reason here. All right. Now Korchnoi had the same type of idea, but he went about it in a way where he's not really pushing the initiative. He plays Bishop C7, but this move doesn't threaten anything, so therefore Petrosian is just able to continue along. So he plays A3. Right, he keeps pieces off of B4, like the knight, for instance. And this move will prove useful in the game at some point when it comes to attacking the center, because White's plan, White also has two breaks. In these type of structures, you're either going to break here on B4, eventually, not right now, of course, but, after preparation, or you wind up breaking on F4. Sometimes you do both. But those are the breaks there in the position. So A3 is useful. It keeps, again, pieces off of B4. Like, for instance, if he wanted to do Queen C, coming there, hitting this pawn, etc. So it's a useful move. Bishop A5. So now Korchnoi, he does the same thing. He's attacking this knight. And he kind of crosses White's plan. White cannot do this at this moment. Therefore, Petrosian plays Bishop C1. So now he wants to continue going along with this. Now, Korchnoi plays Queen C7. Okay, possible, but this looks like a good move. Just coming in with the bishop. Rook B1, and again, it has an effect on White's plans. Remember, I just told you one of White's plans is play B4. Well, with the bishop there, just hanging in there like that, combined with the knight, it's hard to get this moving. You have to think like that, especially in these type of positions where there's a lot of maneuvering. Instead, he does Queen E7. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, it's connecting the rooks, and the queen helps enforce the fight against B4. But again, since it doesn't directly threaten anything, as for instance with Bishop C3 directly threatening the rook, White has to react to that. And then again, I keep going back to this move because it's important. Knight F6, it crosses the plan of playing this move. So then White has to basically, admit that Bishop F3 was an error and play a move like Bishop G2. Okay, and maybe get some kind of repetition here, but White should not be able to win from here. No way. I don't care who you are. So Bishop C1, Queen E7, but now again with no threats, Petrosian just goes along with this position, with this plan, which is a good plan. So now, of course, again, Korchnoi could just trade and then play Knight F6. But, the net result of that is that exchange favors White. Is White better? Of course not. The game is equal. But does the exchange favor White? Yes, because he got rid of a bad piece for White for a good piece. So that's a psychological blow right there. So therefore, Korchnoi decided to play F5. And what Korchnoi is looking at is the potential for his center to be mobile. Remember, if you have a center, the only way it's good is if it's a mobile center. A fixed center is just a target and a liability that you have to protect and maintain. Now, of course, the less pieces on the board, then having that powerful center is great because the opponent, is restricted in space. This is what one of the biggest advantages of having, especially an advanced center, even though it's fixed. If the opponent can't attack it, then you're just taking a lot of space in the position, and this is wonderful in end games. But during the middle game, a fixed center is often a liability because of those resources. Instead of attacking, they're trying to protect the center. So what you see in this middle game here is white is going to basically try to attack the center, white center, and black is going to try to mobilize the center. So this is basically your struggle that's going to take place. So f5 is played, bold move by Korchnoi. E takes f5, G takes f5. And just looking at it, it looks like Korchnoi is going to just be able to crash through in Benoni style in reverse by just playing e5, e4, and just overrunning the black position. But watch what happens. So after this transaction, the bishop just comes back to f3. Now there's no need to trade the bishop off because after the trade, the bishop is good again. Diagonal's back open. It's like we're back in business. It's almost like he got put out of business and then his store opened back up again. So now the bishop is good. Hey, now Petrosian's like, hey, no need to trade. I'll keep my bishop. Now comes the preparation for moves for the move e4. So knight f6. And it's all about trying to get this in. Petrosian anticipates this and plays bishop g2. Although a very interesting move here is b4, the sacrifice. Again, exploiting the position of the pieces. The idea here is similar to the idea that happens in the game. If c takes b4, and you give it the bishop, right, b takes, queen a4 attacking the bishop. Let's say bishop b6 here. He takes. This pawn is threatened right here. And then say after bishop d7 and rook e1. And black center is a big liability because it's hard to push this pawn because c5 is always in the midst. So for example, say he tried to get that move in and just c5 right there. Bishop c7, and now you got knight, excuse me, not that knight. You could use that knight, but this one's better. Knight df3, attacking this pawn because of the pin here between the rook on e1 and the queen up here. Then let's say knight d5. Bishop g5 is very strong, or h6. In other words, the pressure on the black center begins to pay off. It cannot stand for too much longer. And let's just show a pretty move here. So for instance, at the rook b8. Actually, let's not do rook b8 because it leaves the a pawn unprotected. But let's move the other rook over. And you have this pretty tactic right here. Knight takes f5, bishop takes f5, and attacking two pieces. D takes e4. And you're going to get this piece back because of the situation with this queen here. For example, queen d1, and trying to think of something else, like knight here, for instance. Knight f5. Queen gets forced to move away, and then the queen This comes up to d7, and white is winning there. I know that was like a super long variation stemming from b4, but there's a lot of interesting nuances here. But the fight against the center is very important to find moves like that to undermine the opponent's center. This is a very serious position right here. White has to be very careful not to get overran, right, by the pawn roller from black, and black has to be careful that his center doesn't become a fixed target. And this is what Petrosian is basically working on. Get him in a position where he can't really move the center, and then he just attacks the center. So we'll see now. Bishop g2, rook a d8. Now, Spassky criticized this move, and basically saying that he didn't coordinate his moves properly. He didn't like this move, rook d8, and he said it seemed like Spassky was playing without a plan. Okay, and then he goes on to say Petrosian exploited white square weakness around his opponent's king. This move right here, now, okay, rook e8 was better, again, supporting this push on e4, but I can understand why he did rook a d8. He sees the pawn here on b3. He sees the idea of undermining the d4 pawn by playing b4, even as a sacrifice at some point. So he's trying to solidify the d4 square as much as possible, so that when he pushes this, even if this pawn gets undermined, the d4 pawn is still supported. Trojan plays rook a2. So now he's off the diagonal. So there will be no, bishop c3 coming with tempo, etc., etc. Bishop c8, real obvious type move. Again, he's trying to prepare this push. Rook e1. Now king h8. Now does Korchnoi have the time to do that? It's questionable. If he plays d4 here, this might have been his last chance to play it. But after d takes, f takes, he's still not in the proper position to be able to successfully pull this off. And this knight just comes back, and again it just backfires. This plan backfires in Korchnoi's face. So he wants to play e4, but he's everywhere he turns is not available. So he plays this move, king h8. And now the brilliant move by Petrosian here, b4, undermining d4. And this is also based on the position of the queen and rook on f8 being lined up together. So now knight b3. Bishop moves. If b takes a3, then simply knight takes a5, knight takes a5, bishop takes a3 is winning, because again the queen and the rook lined up. This is why bishop e6 is played, and now the bishop is gives up the bishop. And notice he's just removing, what Korchnoi is doing is removing the defenders of the center, of black center. This makes it impossible for Korchnoi to mobilize the center. If you can't move the center, it's just a big lumbering target. A takes b4. Now, again, if he tries to push now, e4, then c5. Okay, this collapse. Bishop c7. Rook takes a7. So Korchnoi desperately wants to move the center, but he can't. a6, and now knight f3 with the double attack. Now you can see the value of the knight that was here on c6, but the bishop has traded itself for the knight, and now the center is extremely vulnerable. So now he's forced to push because he has no way to protect the pawn. If he does bishop c7, right, look kind of last ditch effort. Then there's two moves here. One is just simply bishop a3 with this idea of b4, and then there's rook a e2, and then we see the purpose of that rook being on a2. One of the purpose. Um, and notice too, this pawn is willfully giving up because this pawn will drop. Trade the b pawn for e pawn any day. White is winning there. So basically, it's so much pressure put on the center that Korchnoi is forced to make a bad move. Notice the knight can't be taken because of the rook. The rook in opposition to the queen on e7. Bishop c7, and now look, white strategy is paying off, putting pressure. The center begins to fall apart. Knight f takes d4, queen f7, rook d2, bishop d7. Bishop goes on a clear diagonal now, and notice the king is in a bad spot. So of course he moves back. That's why I was saying earlier that king h8 moves like a wasted tempo. Knight a5, bishop takes, b takes, rook b8. Just a few more moves, and again, Petrosian just had a grip on a position. E takes d3, queen takes d3, and notice now black center is totally disappeared. Queen takes c5, knight e5, king f8, knight takes d7 check. It's a fork of everything, so the capture is forced. Knight d7, and here Korchnoi resigned after queen e6. There's no, either he gives up the knight or he gets mated on h6. So that was a decisive game, and we saw Petrosian win in grand style. That his basic waiting policy, worked to great effect. He finally provoked this move from Korchnoi, which wasn't bad in itself, but it gave it kind of forced Korchnoi to play kind of out of his style and forced Korchnoi really to be kind of like in the attacking position, and he misplayed the position. Now, in closing, let's just go to game 10 real quick. Game 10 was Korchnoi tried to win. Of course, he needed to win, but he wasn't able to. Petrosian drew, and Petrosian would go on to play Fischer in the match, and that was the candidates finals. Now, one more thing to address. At the time, people looking at the match and stuff like that, there was questions whether the match was rigged by the Soviet authorities. You must understand that at the time, this was the height of Fischer paranoia, where Fischer was racing toward the top of the world championship. You know, um, just killed Larson in the candidates match, killed you know um, Taimanov, just shutting these guys out, and it was like, okay, who is gonna stop Fischer? And it was like they knew that the winner of this match was gonna face Fischer. So of course the question was like, that everybody said that the Soviet Sports Committee probably sat down and was like, listen, which one of you guys had the best chance of beating Fischer? And so let me just share this this quote from Anatoly Karpov, and this is from Let me see if I can find it. I should have had it right here. These are this is a quote from Karpov from his autobiography that he wrote in 1992. Okay, here it is. Okay, so first of all, let's see. Yes, okay, we talked about the Fisher paranoia and how important it was to keep the chess title in the hands of the Soviet Union. So here's what Karpov had to say in 1992, and he thought the match. He apparently thought the match was rigged himself. So here's what Karpov said, and you could take it at however you want it. Uh, it was already clear that whoever won would have to face Fischer, who was swiftly ascending to the chess throne. Our sports committee decided that it was better to stop him on his march. Petrosian and a chance against Fischer. Korchnoi replied that in the quote-unquote Fischer age, almost no one had a chance, but Petrosian said that he believed in himself. At that, Korchnoi was asked to throw the match to Petrosian in compensation for which he would be sent to the three biggest international tournaments. For a Soviet chess player at that time, this was a regal present. No documents exist to substantiate this plot, but the mediocrity of Korchnoi's play and the fact that, considering his bitter nature after he lost to Petrosian, he remained on good terms with him, implies that Korchnoi let Petrosian win. There has never been any admission that such bureaucratic interference took place, nor has any evidence been found to corroborate this match being rigged. Instead, there is only unsupported speculation, and this is no proof. In the absence of any real evidence to the contrary, Korchnoi's conclusion that both players played the match in good faith cannot be challenged. The match turned out to be highly tedious. We played 8 draws in a row. This is Korchnoi. People joked that neither of us wanted to win the match and then meet Fischer. In the West, many were thinking the same way, being unable to believe that the match was being played seriously. And only those who knew me well realized that I was trying very hard, but that my play was not coming off. I was most upset when, in the heat of the moment, I overreached myself and lost the 9th game. So, anyway, that concludes our look in back in time at the candidates match between Petrosian and Korchnoi, which took place in 1971. I hope you enjoyed that. Please like and subscribe.